Hello, good evening. This is Trey Olds. Welcome to the Trey Olds Radio Show. Thank you for joining us this evening. Today, my special guest is Mr. C. Courtney Joyner. Thank you, and join us in a minute. My first question to you is, how did you become a writer and a screenplay writer? How did you get started in the entertainment business?
Well, I was one of those people that I'd always wanted to do this. I was a monster kid and obsessed with famous monsters of filmland and Aurora model kits, and kind of grew up during that real explosion of this stuff during the 1960s, and also Marvel Comics and Conan the Barbarian paperbacks and Frank Frazetta covers and all that great stuff that was kind of swirling around.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And my mother was a newspaper reporter and an author. My father was a doctor. But they knew a lot of literary people. One of his closest friends was Harold Hayes, the editor of Esquire magazine. So I kind of grew up around that. But the writing was always the thing that I'd understood was because I wanted to be in the movie business. And so I was making Super 8 films and writing them myself and doing all that crazy stuff you always did. And when I finally got to the University of Southern California, I'd already written a few feature-length scripts. Of course, they all stunk. But I was kind of pushing things along as best I could. And while I was in college, I got some wonderful encouragement from some rather unexpected sources. I did a documentary on Sam Peckinpah, and Sam, I never had the courage to show him anything, although I got to be around him and interview him and things like that. But I did show my work to Warren Oates and to L.Q. Jones and people like that, and some really fine actors and directors, and they encouraged me. Also, during that time, I got interested in doing a biographical film of the career of Rondo Hatton, the actor, who played the Creeper in those 1940s Universal horror films.
Yeah.
Because he was afflicted with a terrible disease. But I found out through some research that he would, while he was making these horror movies at Universal and these different places, that at night he would counsel soldiers who were coming back from the Pacific Theater with horrible facial injuries.
Oh, wow.
So he had this kind of parallel life going on. And I was doing research into that, and I was speaking to one of the guys over at Universal about it one day. I just called him out of the blue, and makeup man Nick Marcelino was head of the department. Because I was actually trying to track down anyone who might have worked with Jack Pierce back in the 1940s. Of course, he said, oh, God, I think all those guys are retired or dead or whatever. But he asked me, he said, are you doing this with Virgil Vogel? And I said, Virgil, like the old people, Virgil Vogel? He laughed. He said, yeah, here, let me connect you to him. So suddenly I was on the phone with Virgil, and he was preparing a television movie on this very subject.
Oh, wow.
And he asked me to come to the studio the next day to show him what I had done. And I had a copy of Rondo Hatton's death certificate, which he really wanted to see. And so I met Virgil, and it was wonderful. We became great friends. When I got out of college, I was his assistant for a few years, and he brought me along through Universal, and I was working on scripts for Airwolf and things like that. And although the Rondo Hatton project was never made, and when at the same time, when I got out of school, I got together, Jeff Burr and Darren Scott and I were all college friends, and we decided to try our hand at making a horror movie, and we did, and that was From a Whisper to a Scream with Vincent Price, and things just kind of took off from there.
Yeah. It's interesting, you get a lot of ideas from writing, and you have to use your imagination a lot, but...
Oh, yes.
There's many things you can do when you write things. You could do a horror movie. There's many ranges you can go from.
Absolutely, and I've always been, I love horror.
I do
very
too.
much, but I also love westerns, and I kind of love all sorts of different kinds of genres, and I've tried working in different kinds of genres, maybe not always successfully as I would like to be, but certainly I would think if you just limit yourself to one area, you're not flexing all your muscles. Maybe that's a little naive, but
Yeah.
that's the way I feel.
Yeah. I love horror, but I like comedy too. Comedy and horror are my favorites. And
Well, I wish I was a better comedy writer. I got hired. I've written one comedy that didn't turn out really the way I would have liked it to, and I later got hired to do a film for the producers of the Van Wilder films for National Lampoon, and I didn't do a very good job there either. So it's not really my forte. Although I think I have a pretty good sense of humor and can converse pretty well. But writing comedy is incredibly difficult, and that takes a skill set that unfortunately I don't possess.
Yeah, it's difficult, but it can be very rewarding too once it's finished, I guess. What is the most difficult part or the most challenging part about being a writer to you? What's the most difficult or challenging part?
Well, of course, you always want to come up with some, absolutely sensational idea that inspires you like crazy. I think that it's really just the amount of just sheer brute strength sometimes it takes to get the work done. You always are firing on all cylinders when you start because you're excited.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're working on a novel or something like that or a long project, and I've worked on a lot of long-form things, it's difficult sometimes to always maintain that same level and keep up your head of steam. And someone very wise once said, the most fantastic thing in the world to do every day is not to write. And I have to agree with that. I think, procrastination can really be the writer's curse. And so it's... but then when you finally get over the big obstacles and you're there at the end, and that feeling of satisfaction is just fantastic. And then it's only added to when the movie gets made or that box of books shows up on your doorstep. But there's always that kind of middle section of a project where it's just like, why in the world am I doing this? What do I have to do to keep moving forward? And you get bored and restless and everything. And at least I do. I think it's. I think everybody kind of hits that valley, if you will, whenever they're working on a project.
Yeah. I mainly do radio, but on the side I've written some short stories and stuff, and I kind of walk away from it and get back to it a year later. It's you forget about it, but it's interesting.
Well, I think that's very common. Probably more so than people realize that sometimes you hit a wall, or the words just don't come, or you can run out of steam. And I was going to contribute a short story to a collection this number of years ago, and it was a kind of a Christmas Western collection, but it had also a dark bent to it. It was called Six Guns and Sleigh Bells. It was published by the Western Fiction Writers of America. And I had this idea, and I was talking to a friend about it, and they said, gee, that sounds just like this old movie. And I went, oh my gosh, you're right. I'm pretty good. My knowledge of film is pretty good, but I was like, yeah, boy, you picked up on that. Somebody else would too. So I was very frustrated because I hadn't started the story yet. That's what I was going to write. And so I had to throw it out the window, and I just sat down that night and just, boom, wrote a story. It's called Christmas for Evangeline. In fact, it was just dramatized on a podcast very recently. And it was nominated for a Peacemaker Award for the Western Fictioneers and these other things. So it was funny, and that was just out of sheer desperation because the other thing got thrown away. So you never know what, I guess, the inspiration is, whether it's a great idea or panic or, I don't know, a combination of both.
Yeah. You don't know what you'll come up with. It just comes out of the moment,
That's it.
Besides writing, have you done anything else in entertainment, like acting or directing or producing?
Well, I've done both. I've directed 2 movies.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And when I was with Charlie Van's company, back when Full Moon was part of Paramount Pictures, and I directed one of the Trancers movies, and Helen Hunt was in it. And
oh, yeah, I remember that movie. I remember that.
Yeah, Stephen Mock and,
Tim Thomerson.
Of course, Tim Thomerson is one of my dearest friends. And in fact, Tim really pushed hard for me to direct that movie. We had, he had been in another film I wrote called Vietnam, Texas, starring Robert Ginty and Dr. Hang S. Noor from The Killing Fields. And Tamlin Tomita was in it also. And so Tim and I got to be very good friends. And when I was over at Full Moon and I had written the third Puppet Master movie, and people seemed to like that one.
Oh, yeah, that's one of my favorites.
And, oh, thank you. And so after that, we were talking about things, and I really wanted to direct, and I was established enough within the company that it wasn't a completely crazy idea. But Tim stepped up and he said, listen, if Courtney's going to write Trancers 3, he really should direct it too, and we'll back him up. And Albert Band produced it, and he was just such a great guy. I loved Albert. And, of course, Charlie's the one who gave me the opportunity, but Albert produced the movie. Tim was there supporting me the whole way. It was tremendous. And Andy Robinson played the bad guy in it, and it was Megan Ward was in the film, and it really was a wonderful experience. And for a first-timer, and I made some mistakes, and I was a little unsure of myself, but I just had such great support. And then right after that, I did an adaptation of an H.P. Lovecraft story called The Lurking Fear, and we made that movie in Romania. And John Finch from Alfred Hitchcock's Frenzy, and Vincent Schiavelli from Ghost, and Paul Mantee, Robinson Crusoe on Mars, and Ashley Lawrence from Hellraiser. So it was a very good cast. And, of course, Jeffrey Combs. Jeffrey's also an old friend. So we had a lovely time there in Bucharest.
Yeah. What about acting? Have you done acting yourself? Have you done some acting?
Oh, yes, not anything I'd like to brag about. I was a zombie extra in Dawn of the Dead, the original, the George Romero.
Oh, wow.
So there was that. And then I was a very lascivious bar patron who goes after Charles Bronson's wife in Murphy's Law. And I get that with me because of that. So, and there's some framed blow-ups of me sticking money into Angel Tompkins' G-string, and Charlie Bronson's behind me glaring. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I am. I'm an actor and voice actor, and I do radio. But I like acting. That's fun. And on the side, I'll do the writing stuff, but mainly it comes back to radio and voice acting for me. But everything I've done in entertainment has been fun for me.
Well, that's a very particular skill and requires an entirely different kind of discipline. And I wish I had been more disciplined about the acting, because I've had a few opportunities and things, but I saw it primarily as a lark. And not as, and I was not as focused or concentrated as I was on writing and other things. I guess I was more comfortable being behind the camera than in front of it.
Yeah. Do you have any upcoming projects in writing or directing or acting or anything you can share? Any upcoming projects?
Well, I wrote a sequel to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea that came out last December through Tor Books, Nemo Rising. And then we did well with that, and it got picked up as a board game for Whiz Kids, the guys that did Dungeons and Dragons, and that's coming out in September along with a paperback edition of the book. And also it has been optioned by MTCA as a 10-part television series. So we'll see how that goes. I've written the pilot, these different things, and so we'll see how that happens. And I write a series of web